chair recognizes Representative Sarah Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I'm sure many of you in this chamber know, I serve as the Minority Vice Chair on the School Aid Subcommittee of Appropriations. And I wanted to take a few moments just to talk a little bit about the school omnibus bill, a big portion of that being on the school aid portion because I've been so involved in it. I really do want to thank Chairman Kelly. We don't agree on a lot of things when it comes to education policy and funding priorities, but he is really a true statesman and somebody that I can work with and trust, and that is certainly very important to me, and I thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. There's good and bad in this budget. I mentioned earlier that for years and years, Democrats have been calling on increased funding, into our local schools and into the programs that, really help children succeed in earning their education and doing well in school. And I feel like this chamber is making strides in that direction. I mean, no doubt, we're seeing an increase in the foundation allowance. And that's a step in the right direction. But I do have a problem that maximum foundation increase, that $120 per pupil, all cyber schools, all charter schools are getting that increase. But many of our traditional public schools are not seeing that kind of increase. And it's our local traditional public schools that are also putting in that local match to help bring that foundation allowance up. That's why they don't get as high of an increase. Charter schools don't have that because they don't have any mechanism for generating, school income from a local perspective. So I don't think there's real equity in that. It's really good to see that we're restoring the money for the 20J school districts. These districts were unfortunately hit in a negative way now with Proposal A because of the cap on inflation, and so we're trying to make it right and make sure they at least get the minimum increase in that range of the per pupil allowance. We're seeing increased money and distribution of that money at risk, which is really good. We're seeing a good commitment in the MIPSERS program, the Teachers Retirement Program. We're seeing increased funding in special ed. We're seeing some increased funds for community colleges and funding for Flint. How can I say I don't support those things? Of course I support those things. But there's bad in this budget. We used to use general fund dollars to fund community colleges and higher ed. And now you've gotten into this practice of diverting school aid dollars. Over $260 million to community colleges, over $237 million to higher ed. That's a lot of money coming out of the school aid fund to pay for something that used to have a general fund commitment. I mean, imagine what we could be doing with our traditional public schools with this kind of money. We could have a literacy coach at every school. We could make sure that more at-risk money was getting to the students who need it most. And we could be dedicating the much-needed resources to our priority schools to actually fund real programs that are targeted to improve proficiency, not just throwing in a CEO or somebody to come and take over that school, but researched methodologies and professionals that are trained to help students achieve. There's money for private schools in this business. This is a business, isn't it? In this budget that I've talked about as being unconstitutional. There's money for some special contract for an out-of-state Florida company to do an algebra tool that we don't even know will be effective or not. We defund the SAT. We're still 39th out of 50 for financial aid, and we still haven't restored our higher education funding to pre-2011 levels. I think we can do better. I think we can do better with this budget. I think we have the ability, but do we have the will? And do we have the courage to make some tougher decisions to really prioritize school funding? And so I won't be supporting this budget, but I do appreciate the work of Chairman Kelly and of my colleagues on all three of these committees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. The clerk will tally, display, and announce the vote.
Mr. Speaker, on the question of final passage of House Bill 5291, there are 72 aye votes and 36 nay votes.
A majority of members elected and serving having voted therefore, the bill is passed.